Brave the cold? You're good? It's nice and warm here. You got your priorities right. How do we know what's really important in life? What should be our priorities? How do we know that what seems irrelevant today might be the cause of immense consternation tomorrow, whether in our personal lives, our families' lives, or the life of the community? I had this fascinating conversation this week with devoted Jewish professionals and volunteer lay leaders, and among other things, we spoke about how the crisis that we're seeing on college campuses is the result of decades of a well-funded strategy. The anti-Americanism, intellectual extremism, hostility to Judaism and to Israel, these didn't materialize overnight. Nothing does. The world is changing every day, all the time. Our tendency, though, like the frog in the pot, is not to notice these things until events reach a boiling point. Had we noticed earlier, had we paid attention, had we taken action, we might have headed off the crisis before it exploded in a mighty burst of toxicity. So much of human life and history is dependent on a vast string of contingencies, the importance of which we do not appreciate at the time. Historians sometimes look back at events and conclude that they were inevitable. It's not true. Nothing is inevitable. History is the sum of human choices, the result of one day after another after another. This week's Torah portion, Vayishlach, contains many exciting and dramatic moments about the life of our patriarchs, formative historical events that shaped the destiny of what would become the Jewish people. But at the end of the parashah, we read a chapter, Genesis chapter 36, that is filled with nothing but names. Name after name after name, 43 verses, the family tree of the descendants of Esau. Now, to so many modern students, and some ancient ones too, it's a supreme letdown. After all the drama, the parashah ends with 43 verses of names. Who cares? Why is it even important? As one ancient midrash asked, why did the Torah go into so much detail about the descendants of Esau? V'chi lo haya lo la'akadosh baruch hu ma sheyichtov. I love that. That's ancient, but so Jewish. Basically, didn't God have anything else to write? The sages basically asked, was God just filling space in the parchment because, I don't know, the publisher demanded 80,000 words? It's just name after name after name of the descendants of Esau, many of whom are only mentioned here, nowhere else in the Bible, and nowhere else in any ancient document. And the family tree is not even a Jewish tree or a Jewish family. It's about Esau's descendants, who later became Edomites. Who cares about them in the Hebrew Bible? And therefore, most readers, even some scholars, they just skim this chapter or skip it entirely. We have a couple of B'nai Mitzvah families here tomorrow, students. We don't assign this chapter to Bar Mitzvah students. It's enough to make your eyes glaze over. It interrupts the thrilling narrative of Jacob and the beginning of the exhilarating story of Joseph. Some of our sages contended that it's fine to just skim through these kinds of passages. As one rabbi wrote, I will let these passages be. I am content with the ancient commentaries. In other words, I'm fine with leaving all those ancient commentaries in place and see no reason to add anything to what is kind of boring and irrelevant material. Other sages emphasized that every word is equally important and equally meaningful in Torah. There's no part of the Torah that is irrelevant or less important, and we don't just skip over verses that are boring to us or don't speak to us. There's a deeper, more sublime meaning that is relevant to our lives, and true students of Torah must find it. That's why the study of Torah is a lifelong endeavor. By extension, these sages emphasize that to us that there is a deeper, more sublime meaning to the details of our lives, even if our daily routine seems to us mundane, boring, or irrelevant. And we must stop and reflect what these details that we are currently neglecting or doing by rote may eventually turn out to be important. Like what I spoke about this week with our philanthropic partners. The situation on college campuses we find ourselves in today began and was funded decades ago. We just didn't pay attention to it, but it was already there. The sages who emphasize that we must struggle to find the hidden and sublime meaning in every verse and every word of Torah focus on one specific verse in the litany of name after name of Esau's descendants in our parashah. And here's the verse. Timna hayta pilegesh leEliphaz ben Esav. And a woman named Timna was a concubine to Eliphaz, Esau's son. All the kids here, by the way, if you don't know the meaning of the word concubine, when you get home, ask your parents. Whereas the tendency of most of us would be, okay, ho-hum, that's good. Another name of another woman called Timna. There were some sages who taught there's no difference between the verse, Timna was a concubine, and the verse, Shema Yisrael. Because the entire Torah speaks of the mundane, but hints at the sublime. Okay, you say, but what is significant? What is sublime in the words, and Timna was a concubine to Eliphaz, Esau's son? What is significant to that? What is sublime about that? Anybody? Like we have all these scholars here? I'm looking at people who know everything. I'll tell you. The sages of the Talmud teach in a midrash that this woman, Timna, was a princess. She was the daughter of kings. And she sought to convert to the new faith of Abraham. She wanted to join the family which would eventually become the Jewish people. Timna approached Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, asking to convert, but they wouldn't convert her. The Talmud doesn't even tell us why, because it's probably not interested in the reason why, just the fact that they rejected her. And what were the consequences of that rejection, according to our sages? Anyone? What? Excellent. That's terrific. I'll say. She became a concubine to Eliphaz, Esau's son, and she gave birth to Amalek. You remember who Amalek was? The nation of Amalek would end up afflicting the Jewish people for centuries. It was Amalek who attacked the Israelites after they crossed the Red Sea, specifically focusing and targeting the weak and the stragglers who were behind in the procession. Amalek made constant war against the tribes of Israel. Haman in the Purim Megillah was a descendant of Amalek. And the verdict of the Talmud is clear in summarizing this episode. They should not have rejected Timna. You think? Had the patriarchs embraced Timna, she might have borne children who might have become heroes of the Jewish people. At the very least, Israel's arch enemy, Amalek, would not have materialized. Of course, then we would have had no Purim, no Purim spiel. But on balance, it would have been better for our people, don't you think? Pay attention now. Pay attention to the small things before they become big things. This is what our sages are teaching us. Through the innocuous, meaningless, supposedly verse, and Timna was a concubine to Eliphaz. The brilliant British playwright Tom Stoppard died this week. I've seen many of his plays. The one that especially stands out to me is his last, and some believe his magnum opus, Leopoldstadt. It was only at a very advanced age that Stoppard grappled with his Jewish identity, and his profound emotions were in full view in basically every sentence of the play. In the final devastating act, for those of you who saw the play, if you remember, the Stoppard figure, a visiting Englishman named Leo Chamberlain, meets an Austrian cousin, Nathan, who survived the Holocaust. Chamberlain, whose given name was Leopold Rosenbaum, took the surname of his stepfather, Chamberlain, in case Hitler won, his mother said. He was 8 years old when he left Vienna for England, but he had no recollection of his childhood in Austria. His parents worked hard to suppress any flicker of Jewish memory. Rosenbaum was gone for good, they thought. As Nathan recites the list of name after name after name of Chamberlain's relatives who died in the Holocaust, fervently trying to reawaken long-dormant Jewish memories, he lashes out at Chamberlain with these words. From Stoppard's perspective, the key verse in the entire play. You live as if without history, as if you throw no shadow behind you. That's the point. That's why the lesson that the sages convey is embedded within a chapter of laying out the family tree. You've not popped into the world out of nowhere. History did not begin with you simply because you were born at this epoch. There's history behind you. Your family's legacy, your people's legacy, the entire history of the world is behind you, and you are its product. Do not live as if there is no history behind you, as if you throw no shadow behind you. The tensions within American society did not materialize out of nothing. There is history behind them. The unprecedented hostility American Jews are experiencing now did not pop out of nowhere. History did not begin with you. It didn't start on the day that you were born. We're living through momentous times. And one day, historians will write the definitive chapters of our epoch. A century from now, students will look back at the events of our days and be tempted to conclude that whatever developed, it was inevitable. It had to happen this way. But that would be unserious and arrogant. If we are to truly understand history, we have to assume that things might have unfolded differently. We have to believe that we can make a difference and can impact on future events, that history is not preordained. We can make a difference. Tomorrow hasn't happened yet. Our actions can sway the balance and influence the outcome. Timna hayta pilegesh leEliphaz. And Timna was a concubine to Eliphaz, and she gave birth to Amalek, but only because Abraham's family rejected Timna and thought nothing of it at the time.